All right, welcome back, Team Hold Racing. James and I have returned. Even though no race this weekend, right? We have a week
No
off
race
between
this
the
weekend.
Japanese
Nope.
Grand Prix.
Yep, we have a week off between the Japanese Grand Prix, which is kind of interesting because it's not that far between Japan and Australia. But they got a week off, and then after that, well, I think we have back to back between Japan and then China finally, which will be our first time. Might be the first time you've seen a Chinese race, Mike, because
Yeah,
I don't think they've been there since 2019.
yeah. I don't think if I would have seen it, it would have been in
Drive to
like Jack.
Survive.
Yeah, that would be the only time I would
Yeah,
have seen it. So yeah, this will be. And I don't think so. I don't think they were because were they there the COVID year?
they might have been there. No, they didn't go to. No, they've been out since 2019. There's no 2020, no 2021, no
Yeah,
2022, no
and I think
2023.
that
So
was the first season I saw.
they've been on the tentative calendar since 22, and then
Okay.
somewhere along the way they fall off. Then 23 they were pretty confident, and then they fell off. And this year they seem they're really going to be doing it. So that track sat there for 4 years. This track doesn't get a lot of use as it is anyway.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, let's jump in. Let's start with some Australia, and then we can talk a little China and some of the activities that's gone on over the week.
Yeah.
So let's start with Australian Grand Prix. Hey, quite a race. Interesting. Got a different result, which probably got more people interested
Well,
than
it's
we've had in
funny.
the
I
past.
I was thinking of you, James, because you were just like 2 weeks early calling. Because we were talking about it earlier about we're due for a race where Max doesn't finish,
Yep.
and there was.
Yep. No, stuff happens, and it's actually been 2 years at the Australian Grand Prix in 2022 for their last mechanical failure for Max, and they've been
Mhm.
extremely reliable and have done well with it. But yeah, it bit them, and the whole thing with the brake caliper sticking is kind of odd. I know brakes. I've heard a lot of pundits talking about the brakes this year. I don't know if it's because they've got new manufacturers in. Or they've changed some of the processes or the materials. They use carbon fiber. I know they take an extensive period of time. I think it takes 6 months to make a brake disc,
Okay.
which is out of carbon fiber. And I don't know if there was something that was going on, if they changed some specs or something, but some people were talking about. If you remember, Ferrari had brake problems in the first race of the year, and at first they
Right.
thought, oh, maybe something had gotten in and it overheated. But Leclerc was saying, well, no, it would work, then it wouldn't work, then it would work, and it wouldn't work, and it would overheat. And when they investigated, no, there's nothing blocked, and they didn't go any farther into what happened. And I think there's two or three brake manufacturers in F1, and so different teams can use different brakes. And sometimes I think I've even seen it where situations where teams will actually split because certain drivers just have a certain preference
Hmm.
for brake for one manufacturer over the other for some reason, range of temperature or something like that. I'm not really sure. But I remember also that Haas, was it last year, or the year before, they were constantly fighting brake problems. The guys were constantly complaining about brake issues. Can't get the car slowed down. The car, brakes aren't working well. Brakes are
Right.
overheating. Brakes are too cold. Brakes can be too cold. You got to get the up to a very specific temperature range, but then they can get too hot also, like Leclerc did. But
Mm.
but yeah, it was kind of an odd failure because it didn't happen immediately. It's happened a couple laps in, and you obviously saw the smoke, and it looked like I thought, wow, that could be an engine problem or or something. And it turned out to be brakes, which is kind of odd. That's not a normal thing. So, the thing is, you also have the conspiracy theorists going off because it's like Max has been causing problems. Christian's been under a
Oh
gun.
wow.
Dad's
Yeah.
been, Dad's been making threats, and wow, magically Max's car has a mechanical issue for the
Wow.
first time in 2 years. Wow. I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm not putting much into that. I haven't
No. No.
heard. I haven't heard Red Bull give a. I mean, other than yeah, there was a brake problem, but what exactly, or it's stuck. But exactly what happened and was it failure? Now maybe it needs to go back to the manufacturer for testing, destructive testing or something, or
Hmm.
non-destructive testing to determine what happened or what. But I haven't heard any more. I assume maybe before Japan we should hear something because that's going to be probably other than Christian's situation, one of the most asked questions at the press conferences next Thursday in Japan. So I'm sure that's going to be very because that's first time that's happened for them. And
Yeah.
then
I
again,
was. I was
go ahead.
surprised there wasn't a lot of talk about it, but maybe it's because there was the off week and so that the media cycle slows down a little bit. Because I thought we would have gotten like just some
Yeah.
more comments from Red Bull on it, but for the
And they
most
may not,
part,
and they may not know yet. Like I said, it may have gone back to the manufacturers doing the
true.
testing on it because it's not a piece they've manufactured themselves. So that's distinctly possible too.
Mhm.
But Perez didn't have the problem. Perez
No, you're
ran
right.
fine, finished I think fifth and sixth, and no problems with that. So yeah, so it's kind of odd what happened there, but great win. I mean, great Hollywood victory. I mean, this is straight out of a Hollywood script. I know they're still filming the Brad Pitt movie, and they should be
Right.
showing up at some of the European races this year. But it's great. Guy has an appendectomy 14 days earlier. Hard to get in the car, barely gets out of it before the crash test. He has to get out of the car in 7 seconds, so they had to retest him after the operation.
Right.
He's got special padding in some areas. He
Well,
had a big, huge bandage, which was odd. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, not only that, like he does not have a job next year. Like,
Too, that actually adds to the Hollywood part of it. Absolutely, yeah.
yeah,
This is a great script, and it's writing itself. And lo
right.
and behold, he wins the Australian Grand Prix. They don't have his teammate pass him, which is
Mhm.
very interesting because he's going to be there next year. And
Right,
technically,
right.
he is the number one driver. He is the guy who they've signed to the long term deal. He's the guy who's their future of
Well, and
Haas or for Ferrari.
it's not like he wasn't there either,
No,
like
he
it
was right
wasn't,
there. Yeah,
because I didn't watch this live, but I had checked
yeah,
before I watched some of it, I had checked the results. Because initially when I saw Signs won, and I was like, oh, I wonder if he had, like a Max-esque win where he's just like 25 seconds ahead of everybody else. And I was like, oh no, Leclerc was there. Like that was definitely
yeah.
a team decision to be like Signs won, Leclerc
Yeah,
too.
and not swap them or make him give up the
Right,
who or something for the number one driver,
right.
who's their bet for the world championship, which right now is kind of neither because actually it's not true. They've closed in. They're only Charles is only 4 points behind Max right now because of Max DNF. So,
Right.
but it was great. I mean, Ferrari was solid all weekend. They had good pace. Fred Vasseur said during this week that this is like the typical type of week they'd like to have, nice quiet week, but every week you win is a week you'd like to have again, especially for
Right. Right.
Ferrari. So, but the week went well for them. There are no major problems. They were able to get the car set up well. They were fast from the start. They challenged Ferrari, they challenged Red Bull, and they were right there on the pole with 2 and 3, with
Hmm.
Max on the pole, but them 2 and 3. So yeah, they were able to, basically, and they had the race pace because they weren't able to get caught by McLaren, certainly not by Mercedes. So they were
Right.
pretty much, they were the class of the field. But you've got a couple of questions, like I said. So look, Leclerc second, Norris third, Piastri home race fourth. Again, they didn't swap those drivers either. They,
Yeah.
they let them finish it out. Both of the Haas were in points, which is a good thing. It's rare for them. They got the point in Saudi, and now they got this is back-to-back races with point for them. That's a big win. You have to wonder if I've seen some pundits talk about the calmer Haas team without Gunter there. He's swearing,
Yeah.
putting swear words out every third word, so that
Well,
it's a calmer environment. It's less stress without Gunter.
it is funny, and not to rain on the parade because it's like they earned the points. They
Sure.
absolutely should feel good for the week that they had. But I mean, when you take out both Mercedes and a Red Bull,
Yeah.
like 30% of the field is now in contention, or
Well,
I'm
there's
sorry,
three open spots that you
right.
don't normally think of being there. So yeah,
Right,
exactly.
exactly. So
Yeah.
it was kind of funny. I was like, what I was actually really surprised by was not necessarily like if you tell me Max goes down, you're like, okay, so was Ferrari 1-2, 1-3, 2, something like that, right? I was kind of surprised to see both McLarens finish ahead of the Red Bull as well. Like I
Yeah.
would have assumed Perez would still be like would battling, but McLaren's gonna feel like awesome for the start to their year.
Yeah, no, they have, considering where they were last year at this situation. I think
Hmm.
remember, I think the first couple of races one of the points we brought up was, is Zach's job safe there?
Hmm.
Because of the problems they're having, the expectations they'd had. But boy,
Right,
they sure brought it on. They from the second half on, they scored the second most points after Red Bull.
right.
So they had pretty much, once they started putting in those updates and those upgrades, they were right on it, and they've carried some of it over. Though again, they were kind of hinting there might be similar to where this isn't, the car we have now isn't going to be the car we'll have at Silverstone, let alone the car at the end of the year. There are again updates coming, but they certainly, certainly showed well. But again, add maybe a Merc and certainly two Red Bulls, or a Red Bull and maybe two Mercs ahead of them. They could have been seventh and eighth without those
Sure.
things. So, but still, take them where you can get them because you never know.
Yeah.
Max can run off, 44 races in a row again before he has a mechanical issue, or who knows, you could have the same problem this week if they don't next week if they don't figure
Sure.
out what it is. I was a little disappointed in Perez's showing.
Yeah.
That is the all-conquering Red Bull car supposedly, and it really goes to show, unfortunately for them, the team goes as Max goes, and Max does not go well. The team does not go well point scoring wise.
Mm.
the idea of a number two driver, especially in a top team like that, is to be there when your guy has those rare mechanical failures. And he didn't deliver. He wasn't there. He was way down the grid. He didn't have the pace of the Ferraris. He didn't have the pace of the McLarens.
Right.
So it was just not a great showing for Perez. And again, draws into question what's going to happen. There's rumors now Red Bull's looking at signs. Then again, I've also seen rumors that Red Bull's already signed Perez for 25. So take your pick. I
Oh,
mean, they're
yeah.
rumors.
Well, I
They're,
mean, I guess he's got a little bit more breathing room because I don't think I don't think the Danny Ricciardo dream of joining that second seat in Red Bull is happening anytime soon.
no,
So,
no. In
but
fact,
yeah,
I heard stuff this week after the race. The question will be is how long is Danny going to get now? Because you got Liam Lawson, who did an awesome job filling in for Danny when he broke his hand last
mhm,
year. And that's supposed to be the junior team. That's supposed to be the young drivers where they test them out. Because as far as they know, hey, Liam Lawson could be a 26, 27 Red Bull driver if we don't,
right.
if we want to keep up with that. If Yuki goes maybe to the Honda project at Aston Martin or something, or they
Well,
decide that Yuki's just not cutting it. Sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
and if Danny's not gonna if he's gonna consistently be the second driver for RB Formula, whatever the hell their team name is, RB. If he's always going to be the second driver, I I mean, you probably and he's not scoring points. I mean, if he's scoring
Yeah,
points, it's a different thing. But if he's the second driver, you're just kind of like wasting the spot. Like,
right.
why,
That's intended to be the junior team that brings up the developmental drivers. That's what it's intended to be. They've
right,
made multiple statements, and they made it again this year. Well, we want to be more than just the Red Bull junior team. Well, guys, until you show me something, you're the Red Bull junior team, okay? And
yeah,
you're going to get the Red Bull drivers they want to try out, and
right,
that's what it is. And Yuki's probably there because of Honda, though for how long I don't know, because Honda, like I said, is moving to Aston Martin as part of the 26 engine project because Red Bull went with Ford. So maybe Yuki gets picked up, but Yuki's by that point Yuki will have had a long leash to basically show himself. And he did
hmm
well this week and
yeah,
continues to score points. And yeah, maybe Aston Martin will be told by Honda that hey, look, this guy's good. He's a good second driver for you. Um, you know, you know, Lawrence will have to tell Lance that Lance doesn't get to drive anymore because I don't think
right,
they're going to keep Lance and pick up Yuki and drop Fernando or somebody else. But Fernando may go to Mercedes. He may quit. He may retire by then. You never know. There's
right,
also word that Sainz may wind up at Audi, or somebody else may wind up at Aston Martin, or he may wind up at Audi, which is kind of the betting favorite. But then again, the people are questioning. Well, yeah, he goes to Audi. It's an unproven project. Startup projects generally are horrible. Takes not decade. It takes years. Takes 5 years. He's already almost 30. Does he want to wait till he's 35 to be able to chase a championship? He can hop into Mercedes and challenge for wins starting in 2025 when Lewis walks over to Ferrari.
hmm
So there's that rumor too. But then again, like I said, he's on the short list at Red Bull too. If they're not going to keep Perez, I mean,
right,
we're starting an early silly season because of the early off-season moves that started the whole silly season. But yeah, like I said, the Verstappen thing it's kind of odd. Started from pole. We'll have to see what happens, next week in Japan. Lewis left also with I don't think it was an engine failure. The engine shut off because I think it was something along the lines of they have software in them that basically like they know when they're going to blow up and they get stuff out of range, and
okay,
the engine will shut down because of the fact you got so few engines. They can generally fix the problem, I think, unless it's terminal. But if it goes terminal, then you can't fix the engine.
okay,
So I think the engine got to a point where like something got triggered. It's like, okay, no, shut
shut
the
it
engine
down,
out. A lot of times they'll say, you'll hear on the radio, like pull over, turn the engine off, like Haas and those guys. You've heard that before. But it seems like the engine took itself and whatever it triggered some warning and it shut itself down. Because I don't think because it didn't go blammo, which is a
right,
technical term by the way.
right,
Like because that's what everyone thought Max's was because he was blowing blue smoke out. Blue smoke means engine oil's being burned, and
hmm
that's why it's like oh that looked like an engine problem.
yeah,
Turns out it wasn't. But Lewis has just shut down. He pulled over. Russell, Russell, depending on how you want to look at it, um, Russell got brake checked by Fernando from what it looks like. If you look at the
yeah,
data traces, and the stewards did, and the stewards gave Fernando a 20-second penalty. Interesting. I saw someone do some analysis on this, and they picked at least one, if not two more races in the past where Fernando's done a similar thing with somebody, but never got pinged by the stewards for it. Now, maybe because of the severity, well, that's severe, but because of the crash, rather than
right,
just somebody braking and locking up their brakes and falling 4 seconds back versus, on the penultimate lap, George rolled the car, or crashed the car, pulled out a virtual safety flag. Could have been a red flag based upon what happened and the severity and the fact he was fully blocking the track in a
Is
very dangerous position he couldn't extricate himself from too. Go ahead.
right. Is a 20-second penalty like one of the steeper ones? Because I don't think I've seen a 20-second
Yeah,
one.
they've upped the penalties this year. The stuff they used to give 5 for, they're pretty much giving 10 for. If you
Oh,
remember what happened to Magnussen when he was doing the blocka, the blocka
oh,
point
right,
thing
right.
in Saudi, they gave him 2 10-second penalties. Those generally used to be 2 5-second penalties. But I think and this was something I think the drivers had input on, from what I understand, was they didn't think that that was severe enough. They didn't think fives were enough. And starting this year, they were starting to hand out tens for
Okay.
those types of things because, you know, great. Magnussen wasn't going to score a point. He ruined everyone else's race, and he had nothing to lose, and they got a point for it. So,
Right.
it was like if it was somebody that was farther up, you're going to ruin his race. Now, oddly enough, 20 seconds, yes, severe, and some of the one of the longer penalties that wasn't a stop and go or a drive-through penalty that we've seen recently really had very little effect on Aston Martin because basically Stroll took one of the spots that Fernando lost. So they
Okay.
basically, I think they had a net loss of 1 point. And if you think about George would have scored, I think 8 points if he'd stayed where he was. It was still a net win for Aston Martin. They picked up 7 points on Mercedes on that, and that's a big pickup for them. And it's a bad weekend for Mercedes,
Right.
regardless of the fact that, Fernando's done this to other people and they didn't crash their cars. I'm not really blaming George, but, in I wouldn't say he needs to be more prepared, but you just might want to be a little more maybe alert when you're following Fernando that late in the race, knowing for how defensive Fernando is as a driver. He's known for some of those stunts like that.
I was gonna
Um,
say, did Fernando have any comments post race about it?
he didn't see a problem with it. He goes, no, 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 And then it was funny because then he claimed something during the VSC about that he'd had throttle problems, that his throttle was sticking, so he wasn't able
Okay.
to. He was having problem. He wanted to speed up because during that VSC you have a certain gap. There's various checkpoints, and you can't be quicker or slower, I believe, than a certain time delta between those checkpoints. And he was
Okay.
complaining about, I need to speed up. I need to speed up. My throttle's stuck. My throttle's stuck. And he was trying to, he was hesitant to get back on the throttle because it had stuck and he'd unstuck it. Now, whether he did or not, he was just BSing as cover for when they went in to investigate and pulled the tapes
Right.
to investigate. The thing is, they have what they're called data tracers. They literally have data loggers that control that know the exact position of your accelerator and your brake pedal at all times. Okay.
Wow.
So yeah, they have extensive data tracing off those cars, and you can use it to compare drivers to drivers, and you'll see like where your driver. There used to be stuff 5 6 years ago, maybe even 7 years ago. They would actually tell that because I remember who was it that won the who was Lewis's former teammate.
Oh,
Um, no, no,
Botas?
no, 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 before that, before he
Oh,
retired.
oh,
Um,
that's before
Rosberg,
my time.
Rosberg,
Okay.
and they would actually tell him during practice sessions where he was losing time to Lewis because they had these data traces. They say, "Oh, you're losing it in the corner, or you're losing it in braking, so you need to go brake deeper to get in the corner." But yeah, they have all this data tracing, and they can tell you whether the guy let up. And it's blatant on Fernando's. He basically backed off the throttle. He didn't brake check him. He basically just let off the throttle. The thing is, remember, these cars are like EVs in a sense, where they have regenerative braking, and just letting off that doesn't mean it's like your regular car and you just kind of coast a little bit.
Right.
They slow down dramatically. If you've ever been in an EV, you know what it's like when someone lets off the throttle. It's dramatic. It's not like full applying a brake, but it is
Right.
far more than just what you would normally do in a gas powered car and you threw the car into neutral or something. It is a braking. So with these cars with regenerative braking like an EV, that is going to slow the car down and it is going to retard it enough to the point where if you're not paying attention, you're going to be George and you're going to be squirrely and you're going to lose it and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But Fernando's been known for pulling stunts throughout his career, various things. So he doesn't have a dirty driver label on him, but it's a little questionable. Some of his things, and people even said if he wasn't so much of a schmuck sometimes that he would maybe have another world title for some of the stunts that he's pulled
Yeah.
over his career. So
Yeah.
so be it. But yeah, again, you've got to look at it. It was funny because I have a friend who's a racer who was we stayed up. Yeah, good, right. For you guys, it was brutal. For us, it was a 9 o'clock start on the West Coast, but for you guys, it was midnight.
Yeah. I didn't.
And
I didn't see any of it.
yeah, I understand. I wouldn't expect you to either. Japan, yeah, it's probably gonna be just as bad for you, I think,
Yeah. It's usually these
too.
two back to back.
Yeah.
I'll get up. I'll get up for like 6 for one of them. I'm happy to get up at 6, but what I can't, my body will not allow me to stay up for it.
Yeah, that was funny. During qualifying, I actually fell asleep during qualifying. I had to go back and watch it next
Yeah.
morning. Fell asleep, woke up, and it was 2:30 on my television. I go, oh well, gee, guess I missed qualifying and a lot of other things too. So sauntered off the bed at 2:30 in the morning. But yeah, so yeah, no, brutal time race. My friend was watching it. He was a racer, and I said for his first instinct was Fernando brake checked him. He
Yeah,
instantly could see what had happened, or to him, he instantly knew. I go, well, they'll have the data traces, and then of
fair
course,
enough.
Merck, appealed to the stewards, and the stewards went through all the data and said, yeah, it looks like Fernando let off the accelerator there. Fernando, I didn't do. Fernando claimed. Well, Fernando kept saying, I didn't hit the brakes. I didn't hit the brakes. You're correct, Fernando. You didn't really hit the brakes. You just let off on a regenerative car, and it slowed the car down enough to screw up George and make him crash.
I mean,
So again, a more experienced. I don't think he would have. I'm not sure he would have gotten Max on that trick.
yeah.
Max would have been able to handle it, but George, looked a little bad for him. But he was technically right, and Fernando was technically wrong. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, like because it was a 20-second penalty, right? Like that
Yeah,
gap, that kind of puts him like almost right behind Sergio, if that didn't happen, or like, I mean,
yeah. No, it did.
it,
It did bump Sergio up one. It bumped.
yeah,
He went from sixth to eighth. I think Sergio went to seventh. But Stroll went from eighth, from ninth to eighth, from eighth to seventh.
yeah,
So, like I said, it was only a net one point loss. All, it's a win. They would do that again, I would think, if they had that
yeah,
opportunity. If you're going to get rid of George or somebody following you,
right. I
and
mean,
again, they may next time. Now you do it again, you may get a 30-second penalty,
right,
or they may put you at the end of they may put you at the end of the lap or the end of the finishing drivers. So they can be worse on this if they think you're more egregious and you've got a history. And I'm sure he probably got what's called a penalty point. They have a penalty point system, just like I assume your state you've got points on your license if you do
yeah,
bad things, crash, run red lights, drunk driving, blah blah
all
blah.
those things, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, they have the same thing in Formula One. A little different, obviously. You don't get in trouble for crashing your car unless you
right,
crash somebody else out, and he'll probably get a point or two on his license for that. It won't put him into any danger. In fact, I just read a good article on that yesterday, on the points, and actually Perez is the driver most at risk for points. He's 4 points short of the limit. He got, and like for example, that would generally be probably a 2 point infraction for that.
gotcha.
So because Perez managed to pick up 4 points in Japan of all races last year,
Oh wow,
where he got something with Magnussen, and then he was in the Albon crash. That's right, he was part of the Albon crash. They got 2 points for the Albon crash and 2 points for mixing it up with Kevin Magnussen. So he's
okay,
got 8. 12 is the point where you get it is one race suspension if you go over that. So he's the only one that's in danger. Half the drivers have nothing. Max, I think, has 2, but that's the only driver that's really in that
wow,
situation. But yeah, again, it's a question of, again, with sportsmanship on Fernando's part, as far as yeah, pretty evident from, like I said, from the data that he pulled a stunt like this. I mean, drivers have done this in the past. There's a famous one from '95 or '96 where Michael Schumacher was in Australia. They used to be the last race of the season years ago, and they were almost tied with his opponent, and he tried to literally take his opponent out in the corner. He's trying to run him off the road, and basically he crashed, and the other guy didn't crash. He continued to the finish and won the world title. And of course, there's a famous one back in '87 or '88 in Japan, which was the last race of the season at one point, with Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost, where if Senna and Prost both went out of the race, Senna would win the world title because he was ahead on points and they both got 0. And he
wow,
crashed them in the first corner. Basically, just drove. They were 1-2 on the grid. He drove them off the track into the sand, and that was the end of the race.
wow,
Um, so yeah, they've pulled stunts like that in the past, and even guys like Lon Prost, who's 4-time world champion, or instead of 3-time world champion. So I mean, those guys are very competitive, and that's a capital V competitive, very.
yeah,
They want to win, and they want to win sometimes at all costs. So,
right, right,
but they get that red mist sometimes, but yeah. So we'll see what happens. See if Fernando's behaves a little better going forward. See if George learns from that as part of his learning experience. But all in all, great race. Great to see Sainz win. Can't say a bad thing about it. It's great. I'm sure. The thing is, I'm sure he wasn't. I don't think he's going to be a guy that's going to have a problem getting his drive. I think he may have his pick of drives next year because he's a proven winner. He's won more races than Leclerc has
Right.
in his tenure at Ferrari. So, again, people keep scratching their head. Wait a minute. We're cutting the guy loose who's won 2 races in the last year, and we're keeping the guy who's got the larger contract and hasn't won any races in 4 years. Yeah, okay,
I,
sure, that adds up in somebody's book, but not
I
sure
know.
whose.
It is. It's surprising. It is
Yeah.
surprising. And I
So
mean, it feels like it's only going to put more pressure on both Leclerc and like the Ferrari decision makers every time Sainz outpaces Leclerc. It's this exact conversation will
yeah,
happen again.
yeah, and the decision bringing Lewis was John Elkhorn, who's the CEO of Fiat and Ferrari.
Mhm.
So it was, I mean, it was his thing. He personally went to Lewis. I guess they tried over the summer and there wasn't enough, and he went back with surprisingly more money. And so somehow more money works when you start making it 9-figure money, not
Yeah.
just 8-figure money. Which I would take 7-figure money if you wanted me to, but so be it.
Of
But
course.
that was from the head of Ferrari wanted Lewis in that seat. So I understand it. Lewis is a generational driver. He's a goat. He's 7 times, and I mean, can you imagine the value to Ferrari if he does somehow win his 8th world title in a Ferrari? I mean,
No.
that's worth the money. That's worth the PR, and unfortunately, it's worth getting rid of sites. And sometimes drivers have been in the wrong seats at the wrong times in their careers. And Fernando's been a guy that's done that. Fernando's been a guy that's taken bad drives at times. And it was funny because everybody thought Lewis was making a bad choice when he left McLaren, who had won a world title with and was solidly winning races and competitive, to go to Mercedes, which had done nothing. They weren't back of the grid, but they had just not performed. And I think it was a combination of Lewis and Toto Wolff coming in to run the team that basically made the difference, because Toto knew what he's doing. And first thing he did was he went to the Mercedes-Benz board and said, "I need money. I need a lot of money. You want to win? I need a lot of money. It costs a lot of money to win in Formula One. You need to give me a lot of money." They
Yeah.
said, "Okay, we'll give you a lot of money." And we know the history from there, from 2013 on. Worked
Right.
out wonderfully.
Yep.
So the points are Max 51, Charles 47, Checo 46, and Sainz is on 40. So it really has prevented the runaway that we were looking at
Yeah.
earlier in the season. But again, see what happens again, and it's one of those things where you're only as good as the reliability of your car, because as they say, to finish first, you must first finish, and
Well,
Max did not finish.
man, I am looking to see like that double DNF from Mercedes like really starts putting a gap in between where they're at and like McLaren. McLaren is like a
Yep.
30-point lead, a 29-point lead on them right
And
now.
and and I'm pretty sure that puts Aston Martin pretty close to them too, doesn't it?
Yeah, like just I think just a point behind. I think I have it
Yeah,
up right here. Yeah, Aston Martin's 1 point behind, and then obviously a big drop from there to RB. But
yeah,
again, like McLaren's gonna feel pretty good being a few races
yeah.
in and having that point lead. Because even when Mercedes comes back and comes back strong, they'll still be, you know, they still got a lot of space to make up
Yeah,
now.
they got a lot of points that they're gonna have to make up
Yeah.
another, and that's really hard to climb that many teams. Sure, if it's going head to head, you can keep finishing in front of them, but when you got to finish at 2 teams or 3 teams to get up into second or third,
Hmm.
that's going to be tougher. But again, we've got the 19 races left, so
Yeah.
you know
Well,
we've,
plenty of time.
we've got a long time. And as far as anyone knows, Alpine is still a dumpster fire, which is
Yeah.
raging in the dumpster, and no signs of the fire being put out at any point. So yeah, it's I'm sorry, I'm just gonna just keep kicking Alpine just
Yeah.
because
As you should.
it's
As you
fun to
should.
do. You know what? It's fun to do. It's the French,
Yeah.
so what they hate. So for all of our French viewers, my apologies, but it's just Alpine. But no, the reason I mean, I have a second motive on this. The worse they do, the more it gives them, the more their management has to start looking and going, "What are we doing here, guys?"
Right. Right.
Because as somebody mentioned, the reason they threw out um, Otmar was they had this 90 race plan and they were at race 50, and they didn't think they'd progressed far enough in that 50 race plan. And
Mhm.
Otmar said, "You just can't put a number on it. It takes time, guys." And he said, "Well, we'll find someone who can do it." Well, by the end of next season, they will be at 90 of those 100 races. And unless there is a miracle, and I know it's Easter weekend, unless there's a miracle coming in a rebirth of Alpine, they ain't going to be anywhere close to that title
No,
by
it's
the end
not
of next season.
happening. It's not
It
happening.
is not happening. So to me, I again look at it from the perspective of, what are we doing here, guys? We can sell the team. We can keep doing engines in France, supply them to the team that buys it. We can
Mhm.
turn over the Enstone factory to the new team. And you know what? Michael Andretti comes along with a check that solves 2 problems in Formula One. And I don't think
Right.
Formula One likes to see Renault go as a manufacturer because Alpine is owned by Renault. But I don't think that they would mind avoiding whatever potential lawsuits Michael Andretti will be bringing against the FIA and FOM, Formula
Right.
One management, to make this problem go away. And it's a win-win because you still keep Renault in the sport as a provider. You get Andretti in, everybody's happy. Let's all
Mhm.
go racing. The end. And
Yeah.
then basically, everyone lives happily ever after. So that's kind of why I want this to keep being a dumpster fire because it gives them more incentive to get rid of it and sell it to Andretti.
Well, it seems like that is going to continue to be the case.
Yes, and it may very well happen. So, but let's talk about some of the off the track. This is kind of on the track, kind of a wrap up of Australia was the Williams issue. They had a
Mhm.
unique situation there where they basically Albon crashed in FP2 or FP1, and they were not able to rebuild the car because he crashed it pretty severely. He took all four corners off of it. He was okay, but it was more of a damaging crash than it was a you know,
Like
um,
scary
in,
one.
yeah, than endangering crash for the driver. It looked bad, but he
Yeah.
watched. You go, nah, he should be fine, and he was. He popped out of the car without a problem. But like I said, he broke all four corners off the car, which is kind of rare. Generally, you get to crash one side, maybe three.
Yeah.
Four's. He went for the grand slam there. Let's say as far as corners, unfortunately. And again, that's going to be an expensive thing for a team that doesn't necessarily have a lot of money. That notwithstanding, they don't have a spare tub there. A spare tub is basically what you build the car to. They don't have a spare chassis. And the chassis
Mhm.
was damaged. It probably poked a hole in it with one of either the suspension rods going into the chassis or something in the back may have cracked because they actually cracked the transmission open.
Wow.
It's a carbon fiber casing. He cracked that open. So while he didn't get beat up too bad, the car got destroyed pretty much. And they didn't have a spare tub. So they could not fix the car on site with the materials they had. So they calculated, and James Valves, who runs the team, is a very dynamic or data-driven guy. I think he's a former data scientist before he moved into strategy at Mercedes before he came over there. And he figured his best bet was put Albon in the car because he scored the most points. And they withdrew Logan Sargent from the race, and they basically put the Albon. So what you have to do is, since that's Albon's car, the fact that Sargent had driven it was irrelevant. They withdrew him, gave Albon that chassis, but you have to make that car Albon because of the parts limitations. So you have to put Albon's quote unquote parts on that car. They obviously had to replace the transmission because the transmission was destroyed. They had to put a new engine on there. I don't know if the engine was destroyed or not. And of course, they had to put new. There's a couple of other things. The engine's got multiple components that are limited during the season, ECUs and things like that.
Mhm.
The battery unit is limited too. So I don't know how much of that was destroyed. They had to replace it, but they just had to put quote unquote from Albon's parts bin. They had to pull those out if they couldn't
Is
use ones from Sargent.
is that a pretty unique situation that we
Yeah,
saw where
yeah, it hasn't happened. Now, there have been drivers in the olden days, and even before my time, where they would literally pull a guy off the track and make them swap cars with somebody,
wow,
like Fangio did back in the 50s or 60s, where they would
okay.
literally, and these were races where you'd win them by 2 and 3 laps. You could literally sit there for 30 seconds. And if you had a guy like Fangio, who was the other 7-time world champion, you could go out there and, sorry, 5-time world champion, you could go out there and um, basically still be competitive because you had, I think the races ran longer. I think they were a lot longer. I think they ran 300 miles versus now they run about 180 to 200
Okay.
miles. Because seemed like they took forever, and the guys always looked like they'd been through. They looked like coal miners because they were so dirty. They, wore open face helmets with scarves around their face for breathing control to keep the dirt out of their mouth. But yeah, that's happened. This I can't really recall the last time there was a race where they had to withdraw a car and give the car, excuse me, over to another driver. In now they used to have 20 years ago they would have a spare car for this situation where you could literally just, and they didn't have parts limitation those days, so you could literally, because in fact I believe Martin Brundle did it in, like, maybe I want to say 2003 at the Australian Grand Prix. He had a horrendous crash on the first lap when somersaulting over end sideways down that where the sand trap is on the first corner, and almost hit a tree. He went so high in the
Wow.
air and landed and just completely destroyed the car. And that was when you're looking at it going, ooh, is he going to be okay?
Yeah.
Hopped out of the car, ran back because it was a red flag because there were multiple cars crashed. Ran back to the pits, hopped in the spare car because you had a spare car in those days. Spare car also means a spare chassis. they basically, for cost savings and because of the parts allocations now, there are no such things as spare cars. Though most teams, and probably Red Bull and probably most of the teams, have a spare tub or chassis, the part that's the common part. And basically, what you have, it's basically, it would be basically from about where the driver sits, back would be nothing. That would basically be kind of a wall there, and you'd attach
Okay.
the fuel cell and the engine system to that, and then in front it'd be about where the nose where the front box closes, where the front box ends
Okay.
for the drive the footwell. That would be the chassis. Everything else bolts to it. The side pods bolt to it. The radiators bolt to it. The rear wing bolts to it. The front wings bolt to it. The suspension bolts to it. All the engine components bolt to it, and it's basically all bolted together. So if you strip the car down, when they ship them, they just ship the chassis. And that's all there is, and they rebuild the cars because you don't want those parts. You want those controlled and not bouncing around. 'Cause I don't think the chassis necessarily are that. They're not packed away in foam or anything because they're
Yeah.
pretty durable. They're all made of carbon fiber. They take extensive amounts of time to manufacture, which is where Williams ran into the problem. Williams has always been a team that's been the last few years has always been not late, but they've been pushing because the sooner you finish your car, you're immediately into upgrade mode, and that means that less things you can put on the car to launch it with the new things. You're just basically now doing upgrades at that point.
Right.
They've last few years, because they may be a little behind in technology, have pushed their car to the latest release. In fact, last year before last, they missed the first day of testing in Bahrain because they just didn't have the car done. They threw it on a plane, whatever it was, the night of the first day, got it there overnight and raced the car on the second and third days because they were just that slow getting their car produced.
Wow.
Same thing this year, they were late and they didn't have a spare tub because they didn't have the time to build it. It takes hundreds, if not thousands, of hours to lay up the carbon fiber to build a tub. Once they get and they were also late finalizing the exact specs of the car. So they were behind. They didn't get it done. Now what they did was, so they put Albon in the car. Unfortunately, he finished 11th. You know, a few seconds, and he would have been able to, to pick up points, but he didn't. Logan Sargent seemed to take it in pretty good. I think it's good for Logan. It gets him some chips, shall we say, as far
Yeah.
as if you're going to keep me next year or not. You might want to think about the fact that, hey, you guys didn't let me one run race where I could have scored points in. So
Right.
maybe I
Right.
get some credit for that, though. He's going to have to show something because his seat seems to be on the line with, depending on what Kimi Antonelli does this year, or any one of the other Mercedes-based drivers in the Junior
Definitely.
Series that could be sitting there. That could be a better choice than Logan Sargent. And Williams has said they are no longer interested in taking pay drivers, which Logan throws some money, not a lot, at them for the ride. So they think they have the financial backing where they can basically bring in drivers that are there on talent. Now, again, if you're bringing Antonelli, you're going to get something out of Mercedes. Toto's going to throw him a cheaper engine deal or
Right.
some money or something. So there's going to be something coming if they throw Antonelli in the car. But the point is, Logan Sargent, but he again is going to get some chips for this probably because he took it good natured. He showed up. He did his part. He was a teammate, and again, it
Right.
is a
Yeah.
team.
He didn't like he could have been louder about this and he wasn't.
Yeah, didn't sulk, didn't complain, didn't call them out for doing this. Didn't say it was BS or anything like that. He was a good teammate, and I'm sure his management told him, "Look, this is it's a loss, but it's a win. You're going to get some credit for this that
Right.
may be useful in the future if you crash a car, or
Right.
if we decide that you're right on the borderline. Yeah, he was a good teammate. The guy was able to sit down for maybe Mercedes isn't going to be happy we had to sit Kimi Antonelli down for something to get in the same
Yeah.
situation." No, so we're looking forward now. Japan. Will they have a car there? Yes, they will have two cars in Japan. The tub was air freighted back to was air freighted back to Britain, I believe, from what Val said. It was supposed to be there at 2 a.m. British time Monday morning. They're going to jump on the car. They shouldn't. They can fix it in the factory. They just didn't have the parts and the technology in the race team locally to do it. Because again, this is a flyaway race. If this was France, it's possible they might have been able to get the car. Thing is, he wouldn't have qualified, so it might have been tough to get the car back
Yeah.
for actual Sunday, because they probably only take them a day or two to basically fix it. They probably need to lay up some carbon fiber and patch what happened to the car. Is more than likely what happened. So, 'cause I think if it was cracked, I don't think they'd be able to fix that. I'm not sure. Carbon fiber is a unique material where it's great on certain axes and horrible on other axes for breakage. That's why you do layup. You do layers of carbon fiber to make it strong
Mhm.
on all four axes. Um, But yeah, he says they should have a car. They will not have a third tub though. So if something happens like this again,
Same
they're gonna be down to one
situation.
car again.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fluky. You know, don't crash it as badly, guys. And again, this is I don't think anyone's had to go to a third tub so far this year. They're the only one, so it's kind of a fluky situation.
Yeah.
But it might very well be Imola, which will be the race after China, or the first European race if it's not Imola, before they'll have this taken care of because it takes, like I said, thousands of hours to build another tub.
Right.
And again, all the people that are working on it have all been pulled off to fix this car. So that's X number of more days that they're going to be behind in doing it. And Valves was kind of going, yeah, I'm not really sure we're going to have a third chassis come China. It's probably going to be Imola, but we get back to Europe for it. So
Yeah.
top tip, Logan Sargent, Albon, you want to stay in the race? Don't crash your car in practice.
Yeah. Try not to crash.
Yeah, we're trying to crash, where you break all four corners off of the
Right.
car.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, again, it's a unique situation. Um, I would guess that Red Bull's got a third tub there. I would guess that Mercedes has a third tub there. I would guess most of the top 5 teams have a third tub there,
Yeah.
or are close to having one if they don't have one there. Because again, it takes time. At the start of the season, it's kind of the thing is we've been progressively moving the season a little bit earlier and a little bit earlier every year. This was done so much, I think, to follow within the framework of Ramadan,
Mhm.
the Islamic holy month. In fact, next year that's why Australia will start. In Japan, I think it was second because of Ramadan. And then once Ramadan finishes, we'll move into the Middle Eastern races before heading back to Europe.
Mm.
So be it. But yeah, again, it's kind of an unfortunate situation for Williams, a little fluky, but it's a unique one, and you kind of learn a lot about
Yeah.
mechanical engineering and all that stuff, and teammates, and how that works. And literally is a team. It's 2 drivers, but it's a team
Right.
that they're racing for. Like I said years ago, the first title introduced in Formula One was the manufacturer's title, was the team title, was not the
Right.
driver's title. That came along later because it is a team sport, which is odd because they used to have a rule where you couldn't give team orders. You couldn't, there are periods of time where you could and you couldn't. There
Hmm.
was a long time, yeah, you could swap cars around, meaning you could literally tell them, hey, slow down, your teammate's going to pass you because he's the number one driver and you're not. And we need the points. Then there's
Yeah.
a period of no team orders. You could not, there was no verbal things. And then there was, people were figured they were coding things where they would say something like, you know, there's a bird on the third turn you should look out for, which would be code for slow down, and let your partner pass,
Right.
type
Right.
of thing. They would code it because these are smart people. They can figure out
Yeah.
how to do it without breaking the rules.
Right. Right.
And then there was again, and then they put team orders back in, which I think is where we are now. You can have team orders, though they have the rule now, like I said with Rosberg, where you can't give driver aid. You can't tell them, you can't say Max, you're braking too early, or Max, you need to
Right.
be less on the brake in this corner to pick up some time. That type of
Right.
stuff they've now thrown back out. But so be it. So yeah. Let's move on to the Horner saga. Unless you got anything else on Williams you want to
No. No. No.
talk
No.
about? Okay.
Nothing else on Williams.
Horner saga's kind of cooled down a little bit. It hasn't been quite as it's quite as loud. It kind of seems like, unless some sort of bombshell comes out of the appeal that the accuser has filed with the FIA and with Red Bull GBHR, whatever it
Well,
is,
yeah, I
the
was gonna say
Australian team.
my guess is the stuff that's been public has been public, and I don't think we'll see anything else until usually how these investigations go again, or these filings. Like, we'll have plenty of they'll do all of the stuff and then it'll come out at the end. Though the one thing that I did think was interesting is because I didn't see a lot about that this week. I didn't see a lot about Max really either, but the Newey stuff started to really pick up some steam. I saw like multiple outlets talking about the link to Ferrari, and I was shocked to see that.
Well, I got another one for you. This just
Cool.
saw the other day, or I just saw earlier this morning. Newey to Aston Martin.
Wow.
Lawrence Stroll's opening up the checkbook, and he wants Adrian. The Ferrari one. Well, again, I'm sure they could probably write just as large a check, maybe even larger than Lawrence Stroll can write.
Hmm.
Because you're talking about a $10 billion corporation versus a multi-billionaire. Um, that that is a very and Lewis is gonna. I hope Lewis understands what he's getting into. That is an immersive experience in Italian culture,
Yeah.
meaning you got to learn Italian and you have to pretty much live in Italy for the most part. And I
Right.
Lewis is up for that. And I don't know, at 65 with a family of Adrian Newey's really up to that. Does he want to spend 5 years living in Italy and learning Italian?
I do. Yeah.
And the team is horrendously political. And it just seems tough. Now, Aston Martin, that's just a short drive down the road for him.
Hmm.
That's, that's a few, that's maybe 10 or 15 more miles, I'm guessing, for him to drive every day to work. And I'm sure they probably might let him work from home. You never know.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm sure
right.
they might have a policy like that
Yeah.
for Adrian. Oh, we don't do it. Oh, Adrian Newey. I'm sure, yes, Mr. Newey, you can live, you can work from home. In fact, you know what? We'll build you a design studio in your backyard
How,
if you want.
how old is he again?
65.
Oh, 65. Okay. I almost thought he was a little
That's
bit older.
no. It's like he's been in Formula One
Forever.
for
Right, right, right. That's
35
why in my
years.
head I was like, yeah,
Yeah,
are
he's
we
been
doing
there.
this for
Yeah,
someone who's in their 80s right now? But all
yeah.
right, 65.
I can't name three people that I remember that have been active in Formula One
Yeah.
on the team basis for that many
Yeah. Wow.
years. There may be some engineer about there's bounced around and he's still out there, but yeah, I mean, all Otmar's been there, but not in a top role. And Adrian's been a lead designer for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
So, because he goes back to Williams, I think, with
Right.
Frank Williams back in the olden days and Patrick Head. So, but yeah, so I just don't know if he's going to want to, even for a large amount of money. I mean, I can't see that he needs money. I'm sure he's been very well paid
Yeah.
by Red Bull because I mean, Christian opened up his checkbook to drag him over there 15 years
Mhm.
ago, whenever it was. So yeah, but if you're going to do that, if you're going to do a cash out for 5 years, I think he's going to stay there and go to Aston Martin or somebody locally, or he's just going to hold. He's going to hold Christian hostage for 20 million more a year, or whatever it is he makes.
Right.
Because remember, the top three salaries on a team and drivers also do not count towards the budget cap.
Right.
And you generally are going to. That's generally going to be your team principal, your chief designer, and either your chief aerodynamicist or your chief technical guy if he's not the same person,
Hmm.
or maybe your chief commercial guy, probably not your chief marketing guy, but probably not because yeah, sponsorships are the lifeblood of the business, but technical talent's harder to find, and now with
Yeah.
the cost cap, you've got to find less money to make your team go. I mean, when you were spending $300 or $400 a year, you had to find a lot of money above and
Hmm.
beyond what you're getting paid um, by FOM for your purse and your prize money. You had to find a couple hundred extra $1 million, and now you don't have to find nearly that much. So I'm going to guess it's going to be your technical guy, your team principal, and maybe someone else in the technical staff, like an Adrian Newey.
Yeah.
He may, for all that I know, he may make more money than Christian does because he's as important or more so than Christian is on that team, in my opinion.
Right.
He's
What do
won
you?
everywhere he's gone. I mean, not consecutive year after year after year, but over time he has won and he has built. They had a long run with Vettel where he designed cars and ran and won 4 world titles with Sebastian Vettel. They
Mhm.
just run off 3, there may be a 4th one coming with Max. Okay, so other than that Ferrari period or that Mercedes period, his cards have been, and if he's not winning, and if he's not winning a title, they're up there. They're competing for it.
Right.
Maybe a driver did something stupid and crashed.
Right.
Maybe they had an engine failure, doesn't design the engines, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Maybe they had a mechanical part, someone designed a part badly, type of stuff. But he's the genius. I mean, if there's anybody you're going to pick, he's 65 now, but still knows his stuff, and that's the reason why Red Bull is where they are right now because he knows his stuff. He goes back so far. He goes back to ground effects. He's the only guy out there that knows ground effects, design ground effects cars.
Right. Yeah. I remember you
To
saying
me,
that.
that's why Red Bull came right out of the box with the new design regs in 21 without any problems, or 22 because he had Adrian Newey.
Hmm.
We saw Mercedes with geniuses, couldn't handle it, still haven't handled it. Ferrari, good, but not. They had porpoising problems.
Yeah.
Everybody else, Aston Martin, porpoising problems. They were closer, but they still had problems with it. And they've hired a bunch of Red Bull people since then to help them out.
Yeah.
So yeah, Newey was it, and he's just a genius when it comes to this guy. My friend says somebody has claimed, or he claims that he can see air.
Oh wow.
So yeah, that's
Pretty
pretty
good.
good as far as the aerodynamics. So yeah,
Pretty good.
so yeah, I would generally, yeah, I mean, basically, it's kind of like if you're doing a draft to start a brand new team, you can pick anybody from an existing team. I'm taking Adrian Newey.
Yeah.
I'm taking him over Max, taking him over Lewis, taking for anybody else. I can get a good driver if because Newey's cars will win titles, and I can get somebody. I can pay someone enough money to come and race a Newey car. No one's
Yeah.
going to want to. No one's going to turn down the opportunity to race an Adrian Newey car for the most part.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like you said, it has calmed down. There's less on Horner. It's going to be. I think that the accuser is going to have problems because my guess is not that I know this, but I'm speculating that she may have had something to do with the stuff being leaked, and Helmut Marko may have had something to do with it being leaked, and that's going to be investigated going forward. And it's funny because at first Marcus said, "Oh, I may get suspended," and then he said, "Oh, no, I'm going to stay with the team. There's no problem." I don't know if he was basically threatening the head of Red Bull that weekend he was there in Saudi Arabia, was saying, "Fine, you can investigate me, and I'll take Max and Yas and I will go somewhere else if you want to get rid of us. We're happy to leave." Because as you said, that has quieted down.
Yeah.
And Toto's just, Toto's being Toto, going, "Hey, we'd love to have Max. Max, come on over. We'd love to talk
Yeah.
about a
Yeah.
contract with you," because he's not going to pass up an opportunity to cause stress within a team.
No. Well,
He's
listen, I
Toto.
mean, Christian has never slowed himself down to do that either,
Oh,
like,
heck no,
so
no.
I'm
No,
sure he
and he
has.
wouldn't. He's Christian. That's what he does. These are
Yeah.
all there are no beta males that are beta people
Yeah.
that are team principals. It's not. It's a eat or be eaten type of business.
Yeah.
As we've seen, and sometimes you get eaten by your ownership if you're all Otmar Sasnauer and in
Yeah.
the dumpster fire of Alpine. So be it. So yeah, so it's kind of calm down. We'll see what happens in Japan because their press they're respectful, but they still love a good story.
Right.
And especially it's Honda's. I'm sure Honda's going to be, going to be a question about Honda being
Mhm.
there. I know Ford. Remember, Ford jumped in and said we want a very responsible and transparent investigation of this matter. Honda was a lot more sacrosanct and quiet about it. But I'm sure they were going to want some answers. And when they're in Honda, or when they're in Japan, some Honda execs may be there meeting with Christian and wanting some answers
Yeah.
as to what's going on. So let's see how that works out. But yeah, the Max to Mercedes rumors have quieted down. There could be ongoing things, or you may realize, wait a minute, let's see. I'm in an Adrian Newey car. I'm going to win my fourth title.
Yeah.
25 is probably going to be a rinse and repeat of 24. I could win 5.
Yeah.
Or do I want to go to a car that Lewis Hamilton doesn't think is going to win him a world title?
No, I mean, I do. I think it was all like we talked about a couple weeks ago. I think it was
Yeah,
mostly political, mostly leverage, unless they stop performing, right? Like if you see
yeah,
2 or 3 more races of like the next 5 of like what we saw this past week, where like only one driver's getting points and it's not podium, then
yeah,
I can see the conversation changing. But you're right. I mean, I think
yeah.
this was more of a power play than anything
Yeah, and
else.
again, I don't know if it was money or if it's just if again, there's other things that are involved in this. We've gone over a little bit on it, and I think a lot of this stems to, unfortunately, the passing of Dieter Mateschitz. And I think Helmut Marko had in his head that he would be named the head of Red Bull Racing, that he
Right.
would be
Right.
the new Dieter and watch over it for Red Bull, being an Austrian and an Austrian company. And when that didn't come to fruition, I think that he just, went
Yeah.
nuts or threw a screw or something, and was going to determine to burn the thing. Like, if he can't run it, he's going to burn it down.
Yeah.
So I
I
have a
know.
hunch there may be something tied to that. So I don't
Yeah.
know, but
I know we have one more news item for this week, and
yeah,
I wanted to introduce it just because the way I found out about it was a tweet making fun of how, like, they basically, the way it was framed was like it was just like wife of Toto Wolff files suit.
yeah.
And then people were like, she's the head of the fucking F1 Academy. What do you mean? You can't lead with
Well,
that.
did you notice how I phrased it
Yeah, yeah,
in the
yeah.
rundown? Yeah, I was playing off that, but I was going to be less deferential and
Yeah. It
less,
was
shall
just,
we say,
oh god.
sexist to her than
It was
than
so
that
I
was.
could
And then that was a British publication, I think, that had that headline, which is kind of interesting because they didn't. I would think that they would tend not to be sexist, but yeah.
right.
So Susie Wolf, who is the head of the F1 Academy, which is their female racing program, where they were running teams. Remember, there was Formula W that lasted a year and a half, and that went broke. It ran out of money. The
Mhm.
group that was funding it, and the FIA picked it up, or the FOM picked it up, and the FIA also, into a series. And they're running it as Formula One Academy. I don't believe there's going to be a world title granted to it, but it's basically to bring women into Formula One through their driver academy, and basically going to
Mhm.
run a series of races. I think there's going to be 6 or 8 or so of them this year, and they're basically, again, trying to bring women into Formula One. There have been
Yeah.
women drivers in the past. There've
Yeah.
been a couple over the years. None of challenge for title. I don't think any of one race. I don't think anyone races, but so be it. So and that's the program. But Susie Wolf, who is Toto Wolff's wife and
Mhm.
is the former racer, so she's very eminently qualified in this. Um, Basically, at the end of last year, right around the holiday period, when there was, it was kind of quiet and stuff, there was a claim made that somebody affiliated with a race team had passed confidential information along to somebody who shouldn't have it. And I don't believe they named her specifically, but someone did some sleuthing, shall we say, and deduced that, well, the only person that would have that information would be a team principal, and the only person that would be that close to a team principal that could have that kind of access was Susie Wolf, and therefore her name got sort of attached to in the media. The FIA's claim, the president of the FIA, MBS, did not name her specifically, but he left enough, cookies,
Yeah, breadcrumbs.
breadcrumbs. Thank you. There, that people, in the press figured it out without much problem, or
Yeah.
deduced it. I should say figured it out. And then basically there was 100% solidarity, and even Christian Horner, who you would thought would have used this to stir things up, said, nope, we didn't, because what was one of the teams made the complaint to the FIA that they had gotten this information from this party. And none of the teams claimed that they leaked anything, nor did they receive any information, nor have they filed any claims to the FIA. So the FIA says that some team claimed this. All 10 teams, including Mercedes, said, we've made no claim, so we have no idea what you're talking about. And then everyone goes, well, FIA, would you like to explain what this is now? And that 2 days later, the thing disappeared from the press completely.
Yeah.
But Susie Wolf feels that she was slandered and or libeled by the FIA. I don't think she's going after the media organizations. And the FIA is based in France. It's based in Paris. So she has sued them. The allegation was made on December 23rd. And she has sued them, and that will go forward in a French court case, which I don't know, could take probably till I'm 106.
Yeah.
If I'm not familiar with the
Right,
French courts,
right.
they're not speedy as far as these things. I'm not positive, but I don't think they're speedy. They're not as bad as the Italian courts, but I think they're
Yeah.
fairly. So, by the way, if there's any French judicial experts on there, drop me a line and we can chat about it.
Yeah.
Or leave us a question, because we can certainly discuss it, because that's
Yeah.
not an expertise I have, though I do have a legal authority I can go to. I'm not sure he knows much about the French courts other than avoid them.
Right.
So we'll see how that plays out. It'll be interesting. It's going to be one of those things that'll kind of go in and out of the news as the various filings happen and or pleadings, and or see what happens with it.
Yeah.
Because I believe she somehow filed a criminal case, not just a civil case. I'm not sure how that works. Obviously, persons can't file criminal cases in America.
Interesting.
So it'll be interesting, because it seems like it's not something where the FAA says, okay, sorry, here, we'll print an apology and give you $5 million, make it go away.
Right.
I don't think it's going to be that simple for this. I think they're going to have to play
Yeah.
this out if a French magistrate decides that they want to do
Yeah.
that.
It sounds like it will
So,
be.
yeah. Mike,
Interesting.
we're almost done. Anything else you want to bring up, or any other questions?
No, no. I plugged the fantasy league in the
Thank you. I forgot about that. Good job.
in the chat, so that's in there. You can find in the show notes as well. And then
Yeah.
I imagine we'll be back next week to get
Yeah,
ready for
as far
the
as we know,
Japanese
yep.
Grand Prix and
Yeah.
get our predictions in for then. And I'm sure by this time next week we will have heard from Red Bull. We'll have heard from Gunther, probably, maybe some Yuki.
Gunther was there doing TV work for Australian television.
I saw. Yeah, I saw.
And he did the post-race interviews too.
Yeah, he
Well,
seemed
that
like
was kind of odd. I thought it was kind of odd to have him do it,
Yeah,
because he really is connected to a team.
I think it's just celebrity. Like they.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it was.
know,
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah. So yeah, we'll be back. We'll be back next week. James, thanks for.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. Appreciate it.
James puts the agenda together, siphons all the information so that I can understand it. So,
you're fine.
But I hope everybody has a good holiday weekend. We'll be back next week. For James Wissell, we're out of here. See you guys.